think we, you and I, everyone involved, everyone who's interested needs to work out how common this problem is, because it drives what resource you could reasonably expect to be allocated. The best evidence we have so far is from a fellow called Otto Scharstedt, interesting guy, he's retired now. Smart, very, I'd say dogmatic to his face, smart, careful neurologist, Norwegian neurologist, Norwegian, from Trondheim, you know Otto Scharstedt.
Well,
yeah.
I'm talking about the same times.
Well, there you go. Well, everything I've just said is probably reasonable. He's got clear views and expresses them clearly, but he's smart. All of those things put together. He went around knocking on a village in northern Norway called Vågå. Yeah. I pronounced it properly, I think. Yeah. It's V-A with a funny little thing on the top. They call it Vågå, so I'm feeling rather Norwegian to have said it that way. Particularly with someone who'd correct me. He went around knocking on everyone's door, and because it's a village in Norway, he wasn't shot or stabbed as the door was open. That would happen in North London. And he was able to pretty much talk to most everyone. He caught up to people driving their tractor and all. And anyway, so he's really interested in this area. So I doubt whether he missed anyone. Some of the things he found discusses, but around the cluster, it's very unlikely he missed anyone. He's very careful about this particular problem. And his estimate was 3 in 1,000 or 0.3%, with what's called a confidence interval because of the number of people he sampled between 0.1 and 0.7. So I think the best study says that the result in northern Norway, at least, is somewhere between 1 in 1,000 and 7 in 1,000. Now, there are lower estimates, but 0.09 is not far from 0.1, you know, at all. And the estimates from an Italian study done through general practitioners. The problem with doing studies through general practitioners is if it's true that a good proportion of patients take several years to get the diagnosis, all the general practitioner studies must by definition be underestimates because the GPs will not know all the patients that they have with the disorder. So there must be bottom estimates. So that puts the estimate somewhere between that 0.09 and 0.3. But even that's crazy, isn't it? If it was 0.1, that's 1 in 1,000. You must ask yourselves, where are all these people? I know the treasurer must ask himself. Like, where are they? If every one of them gave him $1, it'd be like rolling him. And then the question becomes, if there are so many, where are they? Well, they're not. They must be suffering. Let's be agreed to that. If they're not having a good time, they must be getting jerked off big time because they don't have the diagnosis. They don't know what's going on, so they can't be getting any useful treatment. There can't be a good thing. And the third, so they're all good. They're both good humanitarian reasons to find out who they are. From a pragmatic point of view, if you want to drive policy agendas, healthcare policy agendas, you need to know what the size of the problem is. And if you want to attract interest into the field from everyone, then the size of the problem is important. I tried to convince the UK Medical Research Council to study this problem, and they didn't have any problem with the study as such, like intellectually, so happy with that, any criticisms as such. They just said they didn't think the problem was important enough to, it was a really clever thing. They said they didn't think it was common enough, they thought it was probably not common enough to impact healthcare, so they wouldn't try and find out how common it was. It's a very clever thing to say, because the other side of that coin would be if we found out we were wrong, then we'd have to do something about it. So it might be best if we just close the door and don't find out. So I think that to find out how common it is, there's going to have to be something that it's going to have to be driven from us, you and I, because I don't think governments want to find out, because then they'd have to do something about it. It's a classical administrative problem, really. It needs to be population-based and random sampled and so forth, proper studies, so that people will just go, oh, right, and then they'll have to think about what to do rather than argue about the method. We don't want to do that. We want to do this properly and shut them up, and then move forward in a very clear sort of way. The other advantage of doing a decent study is to know where people are when you and I and everyone else wants to advance the cause in the various sort of studies that one might do over years. There's quite a lot of opportunity with that, and I think that should be a very high priority to establish what the size of the problem is. Next slide. Future treatments. Where might things be going? They sort of might be interested in this. Next slide. So, you know that the triptans came from the migraine development program. It didn't cost actually the company very much to do an extra randomised controlled trial that cost a headache when they already had a migraine indication, because they were going to make a fortune anyway. So, spending an extra $1, which turned out to be quite wise. I don't think the industry people understand how much money they make from you guys, particularly in terms of the injections. Every time someone pops out of the room to give themselves a plonk, GlaxoSmithKline are ticking it off. So what will happen? Let me show you something that may well impact upon your disease, and will be useful particularly for some of you because for reasons that will become obvious. Several years ago, we showed that a chemical called calcitonin gene-related peptide, CGRP, more friendly name, was elevated in people with migraine. So a lot of other things were done. And the bottom line of that was the next slide. It culminated in the industry getting interested in making CGRP blockers, because if it's elevated, maybe that's bad. But other things, you can show that sumatriptan reduces the CGRP when it has its effect in migraine. So at any rate, the Boehringer people, the Merck people most recently, and others, Bristol Myers are interested in this field, have made CGRP receptor antagonists. And what's called the phase 3 studies with the first of the CGRP receptor antagonists that are going to go on and be sold to microneurs is this thing cleverly called telcagepant. I think it's a name designed to forget, so when they come with a trade name, everyone will really love it. They'll never say this generic name. At any rate, telcagepant is effective in acute migraine, and that will be pushed through the regulatory business, probably take a year or so from now, but it's going to be out in the business. Next slide.